In a small village in the eastern lands of Africa, there is a rule that every child learns before they learn to walk. Before they learn their mother's name, before they learn to count, before they learn anything at all. They learn this. When the sun goes down, never, ever, whistle. Not softly, not loudly, not playfully, not even by accident. Because in that village, they believe that the darkness is not empty. It is filled with things that are listening, things that are waiting, things that are hungry for sound. And the moment you whistle into the night, you are not making music. You are making an invitation. This is the story of Adaeze, the girl who did not believe. The girl who whistled. And the thing that whistled back. Adaeze was 15 years old, and she was afraid of nothing. That was what her mother always said, half with pride, half with worry. This child, her mother would whisper to the other women at the river, she fears nothing. Not the thunder. Not the dark. Not even her father's voice when he is angry. And the women would laugh, but nervously. Because in a village like Umuahia, a child who feared nothing was not admired. She was washed. You see, in Umuahia, fear was not weakness. Fear was wisdom. Fear was the voice of the ancestors tapping you on the shoulder and whispering, turn back. This path is not for you. The elders thought that fear was the oldest gift the gods ever gave to humanity, older than fire, older than language, older than love. Because before humans needed warmth, before they needed words, before they needed each other, they needed to survive. And to survive, they needed fear. But Adaeze did not have it. She would walk past the grove of iroko trees at dusk, where the other children would run. She would sit at the edge of the river at night, letting her feet dangle in the black water while her friends screamed at her from the bank. She once picked up a spider the size of a man's fist and placed it gently on a tree, while her older brother, a boy twice her size, ran behind their mother's hut and refused to come out until morning. Adaeze was not cruel. She was not reckless. She simply did not understand what everyone else seemed to feel. The elders noticed. Old Mama Nkechi, the oldest woman in the village, a woman so old that the lines on her face looked like the roots of the ancient tree in the village square, she watched Adaeze with a look that was not admiration. It was not anger. It was sadness. One evening, as Adaeze walked past her hut, Mama Nkechi called out to her. Adaeze. The girl stopped. She turned. Come. Sit. Adaeze sat on the wooden stool beside the old woman. The sun was setting. The sky was the color of bruised fruit, deep purple and red and gold, and the shadows were beginning to stretch like long, dark fingers across the ground. Mama Nkechi did not look at Adaeze. She looked at the sky. And when she spoke, her voice was low. Almost a whisper. Child, I have lived in this village for 92 seasons. I have buried my husband. I have buried 3 of my children. I have seen drought, and flood, and war. And in all my years, the thing that frightens me most is not any of these. She turned to Adaeze now, and her eyes were hard and bright, like polished river stones. The thing that frightens me most is a person who does not know fear. Because a person who does not know fear does not know when to stop. Adaeze smiled politely. Yes, Mama. Mama Nkechi shook her head slowly. You are not listening. You are hearing my words, but you are not listening. There is a difference. She leaned closer. There are rules in this village, child. Not the rules of men, not the rules your father makes or the chief enforces. I am speaking of the other rules. The older ones. The ones that were here before the village. Before the people. Before the river. Rules written into the bones of the earth itself. She held up one wrinkled finger. And the oldest rule of all is this: when the sun falls, you do not make a sound that calls to the darkness. You do not sing to it. You do not cry to it. And above all things, you do not whistle. 1 week later, the harvest moon came. The harvest moon was the largest, brightest moon of the year. It hung so low in the sky that the children swore they could reach up and touch it. The air was warm and sweet, carrying the scent of roasted yam and palm wine from the celebration in the village square. The adults danced. The drummers played. And the children, as children always do, slipped away from the firelight into the edges of the darkness to play their own games. There were 7 of them that night. Adaeze. Her best friend, Chidinma. The twins, Emeka and Ikin. Obinna, the chief's son who always talked too much. Little Nneka, who was only 10 and should not have been there at all. And Tond, the boy from the neighboring village who was visiting for the festival, and who had something to prove. It was Tond who started it. They were sitting at the edge of the village, where the last hut met the first tree of the forest. The moonlight turned everything silver. The shadows beneath the trees were absolute, so black they looked solid, as though you could reach out and touch a wall of darkness. You people are afraid of everything, Tond said, leaning back on his arms and grinning. In my village, we are not cowards like this. Obinna bristled. We are not cowards. Then why do you all run inside when the sun goes down? Why does your old woman tell stories to scare children? Spirits. Night whistlers. Tond laughed. These are stories for babies. Silence. Then Chidinma spoke, quietly. You don't know what you're talking about? I know exactly what I'm talking about, Tond said. He sat up now, eyes bright with challenge. I know that every village has its silly rules, and every village has people too afraid to break them. You want to know what I did last week? No one answered. But no one looked away either. I whistled. The word dropped like a stone into still water. Little Nneka grabbed Chidinma's arm. I whistled at night, Tond continued, his grin widening. Loudly. In my compound. After midnight. And you know what happened? He paused. Nothing. Nothing happened. Because there is nothing out there. The darkness is just darkness. The night is just night. And whistling is just air. Obinna shook his head. This is a different place. The rules here are. Rules, Tond scoffed. I dare any of you to prove me wrong. Right here. Right now. Whistle into those trees. Just one whistle. And let us see if anything answers. Every child went still. And then every eye turned to Adaeze. Because they all knew. If anyone would do it, it would be her. Adaeze looked at the forest. She looked at the wall of darkness between the trees. The moonlight did not reach past the first trunk. Beyond that was nothing. Just black. She felt the weight of everyone's gaze. Adaeze, don't, Chidinma whispered. Her voice was tight with something Adaeze recognized in everyone else but had never felt inside herself. Fear. Adaeze looked at her friend. She looked back at the darkness. And she thought of Mama Nkechi. You do not whistle. But why? No one had ever told her why. Only that she must not, only that it was forbidden, only that the darkness was full of things. But what things? Where were they? If they were real, why had no one ever seen them? Why had no one ever brought proof? Adaeze stood up. Adaeze. Chidinma hissed. She walked 3 steps closer to the tree line. Adaeze. Obinna called. She could feel the air change. It was cooler at the edge. The warmth from the village, the distant sound of drums, the smell of smoke, all of it fell away. Here, at the border between the village and the forest, there was only the cool, the quiet, and the dark. She took a breath. She pressed her lips together. And Adaeze whistled. The sound left her lips and floated into the trees like a leaf on still water. A simple melody. 3 notes. The same tune her mother hummed when she braided Adaeze's hair. Innocent. Gentle. The notes drifted into the darkness and disappeared. Silence. The crickets, which had been singing all evening, stopped. Every single one. At the same time. Adaeze noticed this. Behind her, she heard little Neka whimper. She heard Chidinma whisper something that sounded like a prayer. But Adaeze held still. She listened. 5 seconds passed. 10. 20. Nothing. Ton laughed behind her. You see. I told you. There is nothing. And then the darkness whistled back. The same 3 notes. The same melody. Her mother's melody. Note for note. Pitch for pitch. Perfect. But wrong. Adaeze could not explain how it was wrong. The notes were correct. The rhythm was correct. If someone had written the melody on paper, it would have been identical. But there was something inside the sound, something beneath it, like hearing your own voice played backward. Like looking at your own face in a mirror and realizing the reflection is smiling, but you are not. The melody was right. But it was not hers. Something had taken her sound. Something had swallowed it, learned it, and sent it back wearing a mask. Behind her, complete chaos. Neka screamed. The twins bolted. Obinna stumbled over his own feet and fell. Turned, the brave turned, the boy who feared nothing, the boy from the other village who had dared them all, turned and ran so fast that he left one of his sandals in the dirt. Only Chidinma stayed. And she was crying. Adaeze, run. Please. Please run. But Adaeze did not run. She could not. Not because she was frozen. Not because she was paralyzed with fear. But because she still did not feel it. That thing that screamed inside everyone else, the alarm, the ancient warning, the thing that said leave now, it was silent inside her. And so she stood there, at the edge of the darkness, and she did something that no one in the history of the village had ever done before. She whistled again. This time, for notes. Longer. A question disguised as a melody. The silence that followed was so total that Adaeze could hear her own heartbeat. She could hear the blood moving through her own veins. 3 seconds. The darkness answered. 4 notes. Her 4 notes. Returned to her like a gift. But closer. Chidinma was gone now. Adaeze heard her footsteps disappearing toward the village. She was alone. The air had changed. It was no longer cool. It was cold. Not the cold of nighttime air, but the cold of standing next to something that was pulling the warmth out of the space around it. Like the darkness was breathing iron. Adaeze whistled a 3rd time. 5 notes. The response came before she finished. 5 notes. Overlapping with hers. Harmonizing. It was no longer mimicking her. It was singing with her. And it was close. So close that the sound did not seem to come from the forest anymore. It seemed to come from the air just in front of her face. As though whatever was making the sound was standing right there, an arm's length away, in the space between the last sliver of moonlight and the first inch of absolute darkness. For the first time in her 15 years of life, Adaeze felt something she did not recognize. A coldness in her stomach. A tightening of her chest. A voice inside her, not her own, older, deeper, ancient, screaming one word. Run. She felt it. She finally felt it. Fear. But it was too late. Adaeze tried to step backward, but her feet did not move. Not because the ground held her, not because something grabbed her ankles. But because her body, her own body, simply refused. As though the muscles had received a different command. As though something else had entered the space between her thoughts and her limbs and pressed pause. She could only stand and stare into the darkness between the trees, where the moonlight did not reach. Something was taking shape. Not emerging. Not stepping forward. Taking shape. As though the darkness itself was gathering, condensing, folding inward into a form. It was tall. Taller than any man in the village. Taller than the doorway of the chief's hut. And thin, so thin that it seemed like a shadow standing on its edge. It had no features that Adaeze could describe. No face, no hands, no skin. It was simply an absence, the place where the world stopped and something else began. Like a hole cut into the night in the shape of a person. But it had a mouth. She could not see it. But she knew it was there because it was smiling. She could feel the smile the way you can feel someone watching you from across a room, not with your eyes, but with something older, something deeper, something that lived in the base of your skull where instinct still whispered. It was smiling at her. And then, it whistled. Not her melody this time. Something new. Something old. A sound that had no notes she recognized, that belonged to no song any human being had ever composed. It was beautiful. Devastatingly beautiful. The kind of beauty that made your chest ache, that made your eyes water, that made you want to walk toward it and never stop. Adaeze felt her right foot lift. She was stepping forward. Toward it. Into the darkness. No. The word exploded inside her mind. Not her voice, Mama Nkechi's voice. The old woman's warning, buried deep in her memory, now erupting like fire. You do not whistle to the darkness, child. Because the darkness does not just hear you. It learns you. It takes your sound and follows it back to your mouth. And once it finds your mouth, it wants what comes next. Your breath. Your voice. Your name. Yourself. Adaeze bit her own tongue hard. The pain was like lightning, sharp, white, real. And with the pain came a single, desperate burst of control. She forced her foot back. The thing in the darkness stopped whistling. The silence was worse. Because now she could hear it breathing. Or not breathing, making the sound of breathing, the way it had made the sound of her melody. Mimicking. Learning. Wearing the sound of life like a costume. And then it spoke. Not in words. Not in any language Adaeze knew. But in a voice, her mother's voice. Her mother's exact voice, calling her name the way her mother did every evening when dinner was ready and the sun was going down and Adaeze was still playing by the river. Adaeze. Adaeze, come home. The warmth in the voice. The love. The gentle impatience. Every detail perfect. Adaeze felt tears streaming down her face. Not from fear. From longing. From the overwhelming desire to walk toward that voice and fall into the arms she knew so well. But her mother was in the village, behind her, 100 paces away, dancing by the fire. Whatever was calling her name in the darkness was not her mother. It was something that had listened to the village for a very, very long time. Something that had been collecting sounds the way a spider collects flies, patiently, silently, waiting for the one person foolish enough to offer it the only sound it could not take by force. A whistle. Willing invitation. Adaeze closed her eyes. She dug her nails into her palms until she felt blood. And she did the hardest thing she had ever done in her life. She did not answer. She turned, every muscle screaming, every bone resisting, as though the air itself was thick as river clay, and she took one step. Then another. Then another. Behind her, the voice changed. It was no longer her mother's. It cycled through voices. Chidinma's voice. Her father's voice. Baby Neko's voice. The voice of the chief. The voice of the drummer. Voice after voice, each one calling her name, each one begging her to come back, to turn around, to look. She did not look. She walked faster. The voices grew louder. They overlapped now, a chorus of every person she had ever known, all calling her at once, rising in volume and desperation until the sound was no longer voices at all but a single, piercing note, a whistle, her whistle, the 3 notes she had sent into the darkness, now amplified 1,000 times, screaming through the trees like a storm. Adaeze ran. She burst out of the tree line and into the moonlight, and she did not stop running until she hit the wall of her mother's hut and collapsed. They found her the next morning, coiled against the wall of the hut, her fingernails caked with blood from where she had dug them into her own palms. Her eyes were open, but she was not seeing. She was staring at a point beyond the wall, beyond the village, beyond anything anyone could follow. Her mother held her and rocked her and called her name. And slowly, Adaeze came back. But she was not the same. The girl who feared nothing now feared everything. She flinched at shadows. She could not sleep without a fire burning. She would not go near the tree line, not even in full daylight. And at night, every night, without fail, she would press her hands over her ears and squeeze her eyes shut, because she could still hear it. Not loudly. Not clearly. But faintly, on the edge of hearing, like a sound carried from very far away. Whistling. Her melody. Those 3 little notes. Playing on a loop, somewhere in the darkness beyond the village, as though the thing had kept her song like a treasure and was playing it over and over and over, waiting for the night she might answer again. Mama Nkechi came to see her. The old woman sat beside Adaeze's bed and took her hand and held it. She did not say, "I told you so." She did not lecture. She simply sat in silence for a long time. And then she said, "Now you understand." Adaeze nodded. A tear rolled down her cheek. Fear is not your enemy, child. Fear is the wall between you and the things that have no name. When you took away that wall, they saw you. And now. She paused. They will always know where you are. In many cultures across Africa, from the Igbo of the East to the Yoruba of the West, from the Zulu of the South to the Akan of Ghana, the taboo is the same. Do not whistle at night. The reasons vary from people to people. Some say it summons the spirit of the restless dead. Others say it calls the Owuru, a dark bird that serves as a messenger of witches. In Yoruba tradition, they speak of the night whistler, a spirit that roams after dark, luring the unwary with sounds they cannot resist. And in the Igbo lands where this story is set, they say the darkness is alive, that it listens, it learns, and it waits. But every tradition agrees on one thing: sound is not just sound. It carries something of you with it. Your intention. Your spirit. Your identity. And when you send your sound into the darkness without knowing what lives there, you are giving a piece of yourself to something that may never give it back. Adaeze survived. But she carried the mark of that night for the rest of her life. Not on her body. On her silence. She never whistled again. She never hummed. She was careful with her voice in a way she had never been before, as though she finally understood that the sounds we make are not just noise. They are doors. And some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. So tonight, when the sun goes down and the darkness fills the space between the trees, between the buildings, between the walls of your own home, remember Adaeze. And whatever you do, do not whistle. Bit of silence. Now, if Adaeze's story sent a chill down your spine, then you are not ready for what comes next. There is another story from this same village. A story the elders only whisper. A story about the twins who were born on the same night, identical in every way. Every way except one. One of them had no shadow. That story is coming soon. Subscribe now, because once I tell it, you will understand why some villages in Africa still fear the birth of twins to this day. If this story kept you watching until the very end, drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever been told not to whistle at night? What were you told would happen? I want to hear your version of this story. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. And I will see you in the next tale.